A kingdom lies in ashes, and the last hope of an empire stands cornered in a dark, cold cave, outnumbered 100 to 1. Rain lashes against the rocks as enemy horns echo through the misty valley. The era of the Visigoths is drawing its final, bloody breath. Among the terrified refugees stands Pelayo, a lone nobleman holding nothing but a jagged, splintered wooden cross. This is all he has left. But this simple piece of rough oak will soon ignite a fire that burns for 700 years. This is the legend of Covadonga. Before the blood and the mud, the Visigothic Kingdom was a realm of unmatched splendor. Their capital, Toledo, was the jewel of the peninsula.
Pelayo served as a royal bodyguard. He walked halls of polished marble, guarding kings who wore heavy crowns of gold and dazzling precious emeralds.
It was a time of fragile peace. The nobles feasted and plotted in the shadows, oblivious to the storm gathering across the southern straits. Pelayo was known for his fierce loyalty. He was a stern, quiet soldier who preferred the weight of a sword to the whispers of politicians. But internal betrayal tore the kingdom apart. Rival factions bickered for the throne, weakening the borders when strength was needed more than ever before. In the year 711, a massive army crossed the sea. The Umayyad Caliphate swept northward with terrifying speed and overwhelming numbers. The Visigoth king led his fragmented army. To face the invaders at the Battle of Covadonga, Pelayo stood in the vanguard, shields locked tight. It was a massacre. Betrayal in the ranks shattered the Visigothic lines. The king vanished in the mud, and the mighty army completely collapsed. Pelayo fought his way out of the slaughter, his chainmail torn and stained. The golden age of his people ended in a single afternoon. Retreating north, Pelayo witnessed the fall of his beloved Toledo. The grand basilicas and towering stone walls surrendered to the advancing southern conquerors quickly. He refused to kneel. Gathering a small band of survivors, Pelayo fled into the brutal, unforgiving Cantabrian Mountains. The peaks offered their only sanctuary. The northern mountains were wild and treacherous. Sharp crags and endless rain battered the desperate refugees as they climbed higher into the misty clouds. Many wanted to surrender, believing their cause was entirely lost. Pelayo demanded they keep moving, his rough voice cutting through their despair.
They became outlaws in their own land. Pelayo taught his people to forage, to hide, and to survive in the freezing, damp mountain caves.
For years, they lived like ghosts. They watched from the high ridges as foreign governors claimed the valleys, collecting taxes and enforcing new laws. But a ghost cannot stay hidden forever. The time for hiding was ending, and the lonely mountain exile was about to become a desperate war.
The local governor demanded heavy tribute from the mountain tribes. When they could not pay, he took hostages, including Pelayo's own beloved younger sister.
This was the final insult. Pelayo returned to his camp, his eyes burning with cold fury. He declared open rebellion against the conquerors. His first challenge was uniting the fractured northern tribes. Asturians, Cantabrians, and Visigoth nobles alike deeply distrusted each other, arguing endlessly in the mud. Pelayo stood before their blazing campfire. He broke a fragile branch, then bundled 10 together, showing they could not be broken if they united. Moved by his conviction, the chieftains raised him on a heavy wooden shield. They proclaimed him their new prince, swearing an oath of loyalty. Their first strike was a daring nighttime ambush on a local patrol. Pelayo's men descended from the rocks like shadows, seizing vital iron weapons. News of the rebellion spread rapidly. The governor, furious at the defiance, dispatched a massive army led by the ruthless general named Al-Qama. Al-Qama marched north with thousands of heavily armed veterans. Against them, Pelayo had barely 300 men, armed with hunting bows, spears, and stones.
Retreat was their only viable option. Pelayo led his vastly outnumbered band deeper into the winding, narrow gorges of the massive Picos de Europa.
The terrain became their greatest ally. Steep cliffs funneled the massive enemy army into a tight, miserable line, negating their overwhelming numerical advantage entirely. Pelayo chose his battleground carefully. He led his people to Covadonga, a deep, sacred cave set high in the side of a sheer mountain.
Below the cave, a roaring waterfall masked the sound of their preparations. Inside the dark stone, women and children huddled together in terrified silence. The enemy vanguard arrived in the valley below. Thousands of polished shields reflected the sun, a glittering sea of death marching toward the cave.
Al-Qama sent a disgraced Visigoth bishop forward to negotiate. "Pelayo, surrender! Spare your people! I beg you to lay down your arms!" Pelayo stepped to the edge of the cliff. He refused, shouting that his tiny band of survivors— "This will be the spark that restores our land!"
Enraged, Al-Qama ordered a relentless barrage. Thousands of arrows and stones rained upon the cliffside, shattering against the jagged rocks around the dark cave.
Legend says a miracle occurred here. The arrows struck the curved rock face and mysteriously rebounded, raining deadly destruction back down upon the attackers.
Seeing the enemy panic, Pelayo rallied his men. He raised a simple wooden cross, a symbol of their unbreakable defiance, high into the air.
The defenders unleashed their own volley. Rocks and heavy tree trunks plummeted from the hidden ridges above, crushing the trapped vanguard in the gorge.
Confusion ripped through the massive army. Horses reared, throwing their armored riders into the freezing, turbulent waters of the fast-flowing mountain river below.
It was time to strike. Pelayo drew his sword and led a ferocious charge out of the dark cave, plunging straight into the chaos.
The fighting was brutal and close. Pelayo fought like a demon, his tarnished chainmail deflecting blows as he pushed deeper into the enemy lines. Suddenly, a sudden, fierce mountain storm broke out. Blinding rain and terrifying thunder amplified the panic of the invaders, turning their retreat into a rout.
The river swelled, washing away entire companies. Pelayo's men pursued them ruthlessly through the slick mud, fueled by years of pent-up grief and rage. General Al-Qama fell in the fierce mud, struck down by a well-aimed Asturian spear. Without their leader, the mighty army completely lost all hope. The surviving enemy soldiers desperately fled the terrible valley. They were mercilessly hunted down by mountain villagers who had waited years for this exact moment.
The narrow valley finally grew completely quiet. The roaring river ran dark with blood, washing the remains of an empire out toward the ocean.
Pelayo stood exhausted among the fallen, leaning heavily on his bloodied sword. His ragged breath steamed in the freezing mountain air after the slaughter. His warriors slowly emerged from the dense tree line. They stared in absolute awe. A surviving chieftain walked toward Pelayo. He dropped an enemy banner into the mud and bowed low before the solitary defender of their people.
One by one, the others followed. Men, women, and children. They emerged from the deep cave. They fell to their knees in the wet, bloody grass.
One by one, the others followed. Men, women, and children emerged from the deep cave, falling to their knees in the wet, bloody grass. He took the splintered wooden cross he had carried into battle. He planted it firmly in the rocky earth, right before the dark cave.
The wind howled around them, but the wooden cross stood perfectly still. It marked the birth of a brand new kingdom in the mountains.
On this damp, bloody day, the ancient kingdom of Asturias was forged. Pelayo was no longer just a desperate fugitive hiding in the hills.
He was the undisputed king of the mountains. He had successfully drawn a line in the jagged rocks that the enemy would never cross.
The Battle of Covadonga shattered the myth of invincibility. It proved that the mighty northern mountains could serve as an impenetrable fortress for freedom.
Pelayo ruled his small mountain kingdom for nearly 2 decades. He spent his remaining years fortifying his borders and establishing a resilient, fierce society. He never tried to march back and reclaim the beautiful city of Toledo. He knew his fragile kingdom was not nearly ready for that.
Instead, he built a foundation of incredible strength.
In nomine Patris.
He married his daughter into neighboring nobility, securing vital alliances that would protect their shared future.
When Pelayo finally died in his bed, a peaceful old man, he was buried right there in the very cave of his greatest triumph. His successors took up his heavy sword. Over the next 7 centuries, they slowly expanded southward, reclaiming the Peninsula Valley by hard-fought Bloody Valley. This brutal, centuries-long struggle became known as the Reconquista, and it all started with a few hundred brave mountain people refusing to ever kneel.
As generations passed, the story of Pelayo transformed. The rugged survivor of a fallen kingdom slowly became an almost mythological figure of divine destiny.
Chroniclers wrote that angels guided his sword in battle. They claimed the mountain itself fiercely rejected the invaders to protect the chosen Christian king.
Historically, the true scale of Covadonga is debated. Some scholars argue it was merely a small skirmish, rather than a truly massive, epic battle.
But the historical truth matters far less than the powerful idea it sparked. Pelayo gave a conquered people the one thing they desperately needed.
He gave them hope. His defiance proved that survival was possible, and that even the mightiest empires could bleed in the treacherous northern mountains.
The cave at Covadonga became a deeply sacred shrine. Kings and commoners alike traveled there for centuries, seeking the immense courage of the ancients.
The simple wooden cross he carried was eventually encased in gold and gleaming jewels. It became known forever as the legendary Holy Victory Cross.
Even today, the region of Asturias proudly bears that cross on its flag. It serves as a defiant reminder of their fierce, unbroken heritage.
The line between documented history and romantic legend remains beautifully blurred. We will never fully untangle the actual man from the towering mythical hero. The chronicles were penned by those who wanted a savior, embellishing facts to inspire courage. Yet beneath the myth, a true warrior undeniably existed. He was just a soldier who lost his world. But instead of surrendering to despair, he forged a completely new destiny in the rocks. The legacy of the last Visigoth defender echoes in every mountain pass. His name still commands profound respect across the entire vast Iberian Peninsula. From the ashes of absolute ruin, he proved that a single act of bravery can quite literally alter the entire course of world history. The story always returns to the beginning. It goes back to a dark, cold cave and a lonely man surrounded by absolute, crushing despair. He stands alone in the damp darkness, clutching nothing but a splintered wooden cross, ready to face the end of the world without fear.